We got Joe over here, came up from Florida. Yes. How many years? 18. Wow. Amazing. The ladies in the back, Pamela is here from China. Isaiah, Vivian from half Peru. Come on over, Pastor. So Pastor Steve and I are going to do a rap today on the subject of wisdom. Wisdom. So I told him he can do the.
Anyone to help us with that?
Do we have a wise man amongst us? All right. So I love the subject of wisdom because in life it really is like a real thing. I think life can be difficult, and that the best shot I have at it is to get wisdom, God's mind on things. So the book of Proverbs, apparently we need it because we have 5 wisdom books in the middle of our Bible, not at the beginning of the Bible or at the end, but in the middle. Kind of like at the heart of life is this cry for God's mind and heart. So I'm going to let Pastor Steve lead us off. We'll be passing the mic back and forth, but once I give it there, I'll never see it again.
You have a question?
No, wait, here we go.
How do you want to? Okay, wisdom. All right. What's the beginning of the wisdom? The fear of the Lord. That's what it says early on in Proverbs. And these 5 books are known as wisdom literature. And I like to define them as Job is on suffering. Psalms is singing. Not just happy songs, but sad songs too. So we have that. We have lament. There's lots of lament in the Psalms. Then Proverbs is sort of, you know something, but then you know how to apply what you know. You know how to use information properly. And then, what is it? Ecclesiastes is like, okay, so when you're sort of confused by the way of the world, like how are you supposed to respond? Ecclesiastes gives us that. And then in the end, we get Song of Solomon, and it talks about how you're supposed to relate to each other and relate to God. And it's like really kind of interesting because throughout the books, especially in Proverbs and Song of Solomon, we see like wisdom is really defined in the feminine gender. So it's the woman does most of the talking in Song of Solomon. She's singing about how she's, in love with with her husband, with the groom, the bridegroom. And then throughout Proverbs, it's like we have 2 women. We have the woman Folly, and you don't want to like pay attention to her so much because she could lead you to death. And then in Proverbs 8, we have this other woman, Lady Wisdom. You want to really have your life sort of embracing her, engaging her, and letting her lead you. So I like those 2 chapters that are sort of back to back. Naive guy, chapter 7 in Proverbs. Solomon describes him looking out a window and seeing this guy who didn't know enough to stay away from an adulteress, and he got captivated by her looks and her flattery, and he marched off to her bed, and he's going to be dead. Maybe not physically dead, but spiritually dead. But then in 8, it's talking about, the counsel, the sound wisdom, the strength, and what it gives you. It gives you long life. So that's why we have this book, to sort of tell us, it's a book of, it's not a book of promises. You can't look at the book of Proverbs as a book of promises because some people try to claim things, but it's a book of the way things generally go. Like a diligent person generally succeeds. But then we have in Ecclesiastes, it's like, but sometimes the race doesn't go to the swift. sometimes the hard worker doesn't always get his just desserts. Sometimes things fall apart, and that's just the way of a broken world. But understanding that God is in control of it is the beginning of wisdom. It's like the fear of the Lord. We know that the Lord is there. We honor him with our hearts, our minds, our strength, all of that we commit to him, and we know that he's in charge of the whole thing. So, that's the way wisdom begins, and then we learn these little bits and pieces of it, how to be attentive. I think that's the great thing. We're attentive to the fact that God made all things, and we're also attentive to the fact that sin has really messed up everything, and that, to be wise about it and understand that, that ultimately God will work it all out according to his purpose and his design. So I don't know if that sets us up well, but maybe you have something else to say. There, you got the microphone back.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Pastor Love and I do a podcast at 1 o'clock on the subject, so this is like a warm-up. One interesting question would be intelligence, intelligence and what the world says about intelligence or what we say about it versus like wisdom, or how is that relating to wisdom. And I would say the Jewish mind, God's mind, actually regarding the subject is that you're able to get something done. You're able actually to see results. You're able actually to function. You're actually able to do something. Because intelligence is like a gift, and somebody may know, but they don't have the motivation to execute. Or they may understand something, but the understanding doesn't translate into being effective. And if you think about like Jewish people in general, I think that's the one thing that kind of characterizes them as a people, is that they do execute, they do get things done. It might not always look so pretty, but it's effective or beneficial. So in the book of Proverbs, it's not so much about intelligence as much as it is how to be productive or fruitful, how to be effective, how to actually see something go from A to B to C to D and get something done with good results. Because we are sometimes armchair critics. And we might even be pretty good at it, but are we living a full life? Are we effective? It's like you might know all about raising children, but have you ever raised children? You might know about, theoretically, you might have a master's in business administration, but have you ever run a business? You might say, I've been married, but has your marriage resulted in a happy wife and a happy husband? That kind of idea. So wisdom it has a very practical aspect to it by definition. If you are able to overcome death, then that's because you're actually wise, that Jesus faced death, overcame death, and death delivers you from everything. It's a proverb. I'll find it real quickly here. I think it's a verse. Okay, found it. 11:4. Riches profit not in the day of wrath. So you could have a lot of money, you could actually know a lot of things, but righteousness delivers from death. So Jesus was righteous and he was delivered from death. He died, but he actually overcame death. So another way of saying it, another way, maybe it's a little different, but when I go to the dentist, let's say I have a tooth problem and I go to the dentist and he fixes my tooth, I don't say to him, "Is it perfect?" He goes, "No, but you can eat now. No, but you can use it. No, but it works." Yeah, you can say, he could say, "I fixed it." But is it perfect? It's like, no, that's not the right word to use. And the same with wisdom. You don't say, "Is this perfect?" No, but this works. This is really what you need, and this works. So those are a couple of thoughts. I wonder if that hit any chord with you, Pastor.
Yeah, I think intelligence, the collecting of information, and what you do with that information is the secret to whether you're wise or not. We can collect a lot of information from textbooks, and we can do case studies, but the interactions that we have. I read something this morning in Timothy Keller and his wife did a devotional on Proverbs, and it's talking about being we are unavoidably interdependent as people. And as creation, really, he stretched it to be creation because we were made from the dust of the earth. So we have a connection to the clay, the dirt, the soil that God made people from. And that we also have to love our neighbors as ourselves because everything about humanity is related to what God did in that formation, in creation, and in that commission that he gave to Noah and his sons when they got off the boat. So there's an unavoidable interdependence upon all of us. And so do we realize that what you said here, righteousness, where is that? 11 verse 4. Riches profit nothing in the day of wrath. How much you know and how much you have stored in your brain may not work when there's wrath going on. But if you have righteousness, if you have the righteousness of God, if you understand where righteousness comes from, you are delivered from the ultimate death. Maybe you may die in the process of evil. It may be that you are like many people, many of the martyrs died in the early days of Christianity, but they served to build the church, and we are here now because they gave their lives. That righteousness delivered them from the death that would separate them from God. So do we understand that? Do we understand that we are, that the communities that we live in are made up of people that are made in the image of God? Pastor Justin said it very well. Everyone there's a seed in everyone. There's a hint of eternity in everyone. And there's, you don't really know what's going to come from that seed until it's buried under something, until it cracks the husk that's on the outside. And then we'll see what grows out of it. So, I think people have given themselves to collecting a lot of knowledge and thinking that if they're rich in information, they're going to be able to handle anything. And, it doesn't really work that way. It's it doesn't work that way. You could know a whole lot, but, if you got a flat tire on the side of the road, it's the things that aren't, the best thing is that you have AAA and you know the number. That might be the most wise thing that you could do, But I think righteousness, understanding what righteousness is, and the idea of shalom, that there's a total wholeness that God is going to bring about at a certain point in time, and that's what Jewish people understand. Every time they say that word, it's like they may not, they may say it casually. Some Jewish people may say it casually. But when they say shalom, they are really announcing that, there is a rightness and a holiness that God is going to bring to pass at some point. And that's going to be the new heavens and the new earth. This isn't, there's going to be like a repurposing and a recreating and a regeneration that comes. It starts in us, in our hearts, but eventually the whole of what God made is going to be back in order.
If you think of the word fool, okay, so you have wisdom, and then we have like the opposite of fool. And I've seen in myself like foolishness. Actually, I think it's in the list of Mark 7:21-23. I think it is. I think I should look it up, but I'm not. I'm not doing that, I guess. Mark 7:21-23. Yeah. Like you said, you get a flat tire, you have AAA, and you don't know the phone number. You need to know the phone number. Have you ever been in a situation where you kind of know what you should do, but you're not able to do it for some reason? Maybe in that case, you have the flat tire and you just are I don't know, frustrated, you give up, hitchhike out of the area, or you don't want to face. There's a proverb that says a slothful man, and 26 has got a few of these slothful proverbs. He will not even roast what he takes in hunting. Has anybody gone fishing as a kid and you had the fish in a pail of water, and then the next day, the fish is floating sideways on the top? I didn't even do anything. I did it halfway. I hunted, but I didn't roast it. I didn't eat it. I couldn't even bring my hand up to my mouth. There's another proverb. I can't even go from the plate to the mouth because I'm lazy, slothful. A foolish person is lazy and is slothful. And how much I had an English teacher. It's like the only thing I remember in the whole class was that she said men are lazy, and that was like I took that. Like, I think she's saying something, men are lazy. And I don't know anything about context of it or her background or why she said it, but that's one of the things I took away from high school English, that statement. But anyway, the Proverbs deal with, like what Pastor Steve said about suffering. We need help with suffering, so we have the book of Job. There's worship. We need help with worship, so we have the book of Psalms. We need help with money, relationships, women, temptations, so we have the book of Proverbs. And then we need help with love, so we have the book of Song of Solomon. And we need help for purpose. What's my purpose in life? So we have Ecclesiastes. And this is beautiful because I think I've learned more in the church than I have ever learned in any other time in my life. I mean, grade school was great, elementary school, middle school, high school. That's a foundation, but in college. But the greatest thing was Bible school, because these kind of lessons I take them home with me. I can take it home with me, and that's who Jesus Christ is. He said, "A wiser than Solomon is here," and in 2025, in the world we are living in the Western world. Especially in the Western world, not traditional living in a third world, or you are living as a Hindu or a Buddhist or whatever in China. You're living in a tradition of your family and generations. And identity is kind of you're brought up with it. But in the Western world, we need so much help because basically we're on our own. And our tradition is not guiding us. Our tradition is not really leading us. So we really need a foundation. And that's the strength also of the Western world, is that we have the freedom to explore. We have the freedom to study, travel, learn. We have the freedom to make our decisions, but you got to make wise ones, or else the world, I will be a fool, and I'll be caught in my own, my own devices. So, it's a great subject. Thanks, Pastor Steve. You want to wrap it up?
Sure. I think, I think it's two things to recognize is our need, like you said, need for the church, multitude of counselors, there is safety, but also that you are loved with an everlasting love personally. So, I think you need both of those things. You need to know that God loves you just for who you are. And then when you come into a church and you find a fellowship, you get the benefit of having other people who are loved that way. And so that's why church is important, to be in a community is, Jesus didn't have, Jesus collected a variety of people around him. It wasn't just, they weren't all just fishermen, but he started with a bunch of fishermen. And, but I think that's true. And I think the two proverbs that he uses, like, where he gave up, he found a treasure in a field, sold everything that he had, and he got it. And that's like, I think of those proverbs working together, those parables working together, that the church is the treasure. Everything is there. There's a variety of like precious things in there. And then also there's a pearl of great price. It was a great price to find one pearl buried in an oyster somewhere. Whatever sea that you were buried in, Jesus came for you and gave everything he could to get you. So you have to work both of those things, And, that's, it's not, that's wisdom to understand, like, you're loved by God and to understand that you need to be in a community with people who understand that they're loved by God. And then there's safety. You have counsel from a variety of people, and that's wisdom, So come to church tonight. 7:00. There'll be a bunch of like pearls bought with a great price together in a treasure box that is 6025 Moravia Park Drive. Wasn't much of a treasure box in 1989, but right now it looks kind of really nice, from what it once was. Trust me. Remember the strings into the buckets the one year we had all the storms? Do you remember that? Anyone remember that? Do you remember that? Yeah, we had such a bad leaky roof. We had buckets all through the congregation. Pastor Stevens is preaching, and there's buckets, and drips are coming down these strings into the buckets. Tech ops managed to like handle the leaks until we could get a new roof, so we all didn't get rained on. And we all came to church, and here we are 30 years later. Anyway, that it? All right. God bless you all online. God bless everyone here. And God bless your podcast. Yeah, it's amazing. All right. See ya.